There is a man in every room who sees what everyone else missed, who asks the question that reframes the entire conversation, who is quiet for 20 minutes, and then says one thing that changes the direction of everything that came before it. He is not always the most educated person there. He is not always the most experienced. He is almost never the loudest. What he has is not intelligence as a fixed trait. It is intelligence as a daily practice, a set of habits so small and so unglamorous that the people around him have never thought to install them, because they do not look like the things intelligence is supposed to look like from the outside. Stephen Strange was the smartest person in every room before Kamartaj, and the most dangerous kind of smart, the kind that had stopped learning because the credentials confirmed that the learning was already done. What Kamartaj stripped away was not his intelligence, it was his relationship with knowing, the assumption that the room had nothing to teach him. What replaced it built something his credentials never could. These 8 habits build the same thing. Here is every one. Habit 1. Read outside your field every week. One article, one chapter, one piece of writing from a domain completely unrelated to your primary area of competence. The intelligence that stands out in a room is almost never the intelligence that knows the most within one field. It is the intelligence that draws unexpected connections between fields, that recognizes the pattern from biology operating inside the business problem, or the principle from architecture solving the engineering question. That cross-domain pattern recognition is not a natural gift. It is built through the habit of consuming outside the boundaries of what already feels relevant. Habit 2. Write down the strongest argument against your current position on one thing every week, not a position you disagree with. Your own current belief examined for its weakest point. The man who cannot construct the strongest case against his own view does not fully understand the view he is holding. The man who can construct it, and has in writing before the conversation, is the one in the room who changes positions based on evidence, rather than defending positions based on identity. That quality is rarer than almost any specific knowledge, and more useful in every room it enters. Habit 3. Ask one more question before offering your answer. In every conversation where the temptation is to respond immediately. One more question first, not to delay, to ensure the answer addresses the actual problem rather than the stated problem. Most conversations present the symptom. The diagnosis is underneath it. The man who asks one more question before answering is operating on the diagnosis, while everyone else is arguing about the symptom. That habit, practiced consistently, produces a reputation for insight that has nothing to do with native intelligence and everything to do with the discipline of not answering too fast. Habit 4. Spend 10 minutes after every significant conversation identifying what you missed, not what you said. Well, what you didn't understand, what you assumed incorrectly, what the other person was actually saying that you processed too quickly to receive. The man who reviews what he missed learns faster from every conversation than the man who reviews what he said well. Strange's most significant learning at Kamartaj happened in the gap between what he assumed was being taught and what was actually being demonstrated. The review is how the gap becomes visible. Without it, the same assumptions recur in every subsequent conversation. Stay with the final 4. The first 4 build the intake. What comes next builds the output, and habit 7 is the one that most visibly separates the man who is genuinely intelligent from the man who is merely well-informed, in any room within the first 10 minutes. Habit 5. Teach something you learned this week to someone who knows nothing about it, not to demonstrate knowledge, to test it. The gaps in understanding that reading conceals become immediately visible the moment explanation is required. A man who can explain a complex idea in plain language to someone unfamiliar with it understands it at a level that a man who can only discuss it with experts does not. The habit of weekly explanation builds the processing depth that separates understanding from familiarity, 2 states that feel identical until the moment explanation is required, and one of them fails. Habit 6. Sit with uncertainty without resolving it prematurely. When a question arises that does not have an immediate clear answer, resist the reflex to find the nearest available resolution and hold the question open instead. The brain is an answer-seeking instrument. Left to its defaults, it will accept a plausible answer over an accurate one simply to close the open loop. The man who can tolerate the discomfort of an unresolved question long enough for the accurate answer to emerge thinks at a fundamentally different level than the man who accepts the first plausible answer to reduce the discomfort. The practice is the daily choice to hold the question one day longer than it wants to be held. Habit 7. Listen for what is not being said. In every meeting, every conversation, every situation where information is being presented, name to yourself what is conspicuously absent. What question nobody is asking. What assumption everyone is making without examining. What the speaker is carefully not addressing. The intelligence that changes the direction of a room almost always operates on the absence rather than the presence, on the gap in the argument, the unspoken constraint, the assumption load-bearing enough to be unexamined. That intelligence is not native. It is trained. The training is the daily habit of looking for the gap before contributing to the content. Habit 8. Change your mind visibly and without defensiveness when the evidence warrants it. Not as a performance of open-mindedness, as the actual operating principle. The man who changes positions based on evidence in a room where others are defending positions based on identity becomes the most credible intelligence in that room within minutes. Not because he was right first, but because he demonstrated that being right matters more to him than being consistent. That demonstration, observed once, recalibrates how every subsequent thing he says is weighted. Strange's most significant transition at Camartage was not learning new knowledge. It was being seen to genuinely revise what he had been certain of. That revision is what made the room take him seriously, in a different way than his credentials ever had. You came into this expecting 8 techniques for appearing smarter, ways to sound more intelligent, ask better questions in meetings, project the quality of being the most capable person present. The man who is trying to appear as the smartest person in the room is the most visible person in the room who is not. The man who is running these 8 habits is not trying to appear as anything. He is genuinely processing faster, seeing further, understanding more completely than the people around him, because his daily habits have built an intelligence that operates on substance rather than on signal. The appearance follows the substance. It cannot be installed in the reverse order. Every habit on this list builds the substance. The appearance is the compound interest on the substance. Start building the substance this week. Install 2. The 2 that address the specific gaps in how you currently process and engage with information, not the 2 that sound most impressive. The 2 that address the actual weakness. If you have never written the strongest argument against your own position, do it tonight on one belief you currently hold without examination. If you have never reviewed a conversation for what you missed rather than what you said, do it tonight on the last significant conversation you had. If you have never read deliberately outside your field, identify one domain this week and spend 20 minutes inside it. Strange became the most useful intelligence in every room, not because he accumulated the most knowledge, but because he rebuilt his relationship with the limits of his knowledge. The 8 habits are that relationship rebuilt daily. 2 of them, held for 30 days, produce a different kind of presence in every room they enter. Not louder, not more credentialed, but more genuinely useful. And genuinely useful is the only quality that still matters when the credentials have all been presented and the room still has a problem that nobody has solved. The smartest person in the room is not the one who knows the most. It is the one who learned the most recently and who built the daily habits that make recent learning the permanent condition. 2 habits. This week. The substance first. The room notices the substance eventually without being told to look for it. That is how it works. That is the only way it works. One question. Which of the 8, name the number, is the habit your current intellectual practice is most missing? Drop it in the comments. That gap is where the real intelligence is waiting to be built, not eventually. This week, if this reframed intelligence from a fixed trait to a daily practice, subscribe. More of this. No credentials required.